So, if you didn't know, now you know. Welcome to day 49 here at Space Between Ideas. I'm Blaine Gates. And today is we're at day 49. So, doesn't that mean we're getting awfully close to the middle of the road? Very, very close. The snow is melting a little bit outside. The river is still frozen here in Minsk, completely frozen. People have stopped walking across the river for fear of falling through. But yeah, we're getting awfully close. So as you remember, we were talking about state impact. Now remember, impact is what? Impact is how much impact, the force, the reaction, what is going to happen in the market when you provide your product or service. So today, and when we talk about state impact, we're talking about evaluating courses of action. Now, as you remember, we started with framing context, and that was the first thing that we spoke about in state impact. So we were talking about how do you frame the context? So we're talking about where do the scenarios occur that you would like to think about? So you have what's the situation? What's happening? From a relationship standpoint, you call up your girlfriend and be like, hey, what's up? What is the situation here? What is the background? Where do these situations occur? What are the elements that are going to impact these scenarios that we're going to discuss? And so then that's when we move to the next step. I realized that as we're developing scenarios, I thought that we needed a little more help for how to develop these scenarios. And that's why we moved from the state impact checklist to the state teamwork checklist. Because oftentimes when we're talking about impact, when we're talking about scenarios, then we need to discuss how are we going to develop the teamwork or the contractual relationship around each scenario. Now, I put a little bit more thought into it today, and also we're on the next step. So in the first day, we talked about the naming the entities, naming the people who are involved, or describing the entities, describing the people involved, describing the companies involved, putting in the parties. And then, so today you should have a piece of paper, at least one piece of paper that has at least two names on it. Or maybe it's just your own company. But I mean, you kind of need, when you're talking about scenarios, usually they involve more than one person. Because there's going to be, the least case scenario, it's going to be your company and your customer. Or it's going to be your company and your provider. Or it's going to be two people who are working together in your company. So identify some type of relationship between entities, between people. And then, so you should write those names at the top of your piece of paper. And then you have to decide, what is it that you are trying to plan? So now, so day two, what we're talking about is what do the entities want? Now, we had this discussion a long, long time ago, and we've actually been having this discussion all throughout the last 49 days. So when you talk about what entities want, if we go back to the Endeavor elements, then what entities want, they want outcomes. All right, so they want effects. They want to see the result. You can't say to some person oh, look, we have all this potential, and then that's it. They're like, so what? There's rare minerals under the crust of the earth, and if they're just down there, what can we do with that? It's potential. Now what? Oh, okay, well, we have a plan. We're going to go and extract these rare minerals from the earth. Okay, how? And then once you get them, you actually have to go, and you can't just have a plan. You have to actually have the outcome. You have to have the result. You have to pull out those rare minerals, and then you have to put them in the hand of your customer, and then he'll say thank you. all right? So your customer, in this case, he wants that rare earth mineral. Now, what about, so if you go back to, so, okay, we're talking about creating effects. Now, if we look at the state progress checklist, then there's two areas. And the first one that we focus on is outcomes. All right, now if you're in the Create Crucial Insight book and you turn to state progress, there's a couple of different things that you can describe as outcomes. For example, activities. Maybe you're planning an activity, all right? So you're planning some kind of sales promotion. You're planning some type of, you want to hire people. You're planning some kind of, your financial department, they want to create some reports. Maybe you want to have some kind of, you want to show a house. Maybe you want to have some meetings with some new customers. Like maybe there's some type of activity that you need to plan. Now, if you are planning some activity, then like what are the outcomes that you want from that activity? All right, like how do you want that activity, what do you want that activity to look like? How do you want it to present itself? How do you want it to play out? What are the outcomes? What do you want from that activity? Maybe it's communications, all right? So maybe you need to write some emails. Maybe you need to write some marketing messages. Maybe you need to send out some offers. Maybe you need to, maybe you're a lawyer and you need to write some law. Or I guess you'd be a legislator. Maybe you need to write some contracts, all right? So there's something that needs to be done. There's some kind of outcome that needs to be reached. All right, so if it's communications, what are the communications that you want? And what do you want from those communications? What do you want the result to be from those communications? All right, so what do you want the actual communication to look like? What do you want the structure to look like? What words are you going to use? What do you want the effect of that communication to be? All right, also maybe you are planning some new products. All right, so what do you want that product to do? Who do you want to buy that product? What is the market that you're servicing? Maybe it's a service, so product services, you know, there's the product market, there's the services market. What is the service that you are offering? What are your customers expecting from that service? What do you expect your employees to do as they are doing that service? What do you want the result of that service to be? What are the outcomes? Maybe there's some kind of feature. You want some new feature in your app, on your website, in your product, with your service, in your activity. What are the features? What is the little, you know, the bells and whistles and the buttons that you want? What are the additional things that you need in order to grab hold of that market? Now, when you are thinking about what your customers want, all right? So if you put your business on the one side of the sheet and you put your customers on the other side of the sheet, and you're trying to understand what is it that your customers want. Now, you need to be able to, the outcome that you are trying to achieve, all right? You are trying to achieve an outcome. Now, when you provide your product or your service or your feature, your activity, your communication, you want the benefit to your customer to rank higher, all right? You want to have a higher benefit than the benefit that these guys are going to get from traditional products. All right, so what do they want? So you can write down, like, what is the benefit that the customers of your competitors, what are the benefits that they're getting from your customers' products? And then what is that benefit? And then is it possible for you to think of like a higher ranked benefit? Is there some way, first of all, do they have an outcome? Is there some outcome that they want to achieve, which is actually more than they're previously getting from their current provider? And can you identify that need? Is it related to the product itself? Is it related to the service behind the product? Is it related to the relationship to the people that they're going to be dealing with in your company? Like the whole package of the service or product that you're presenting to that company, the benefit needs to be higher than the benefit they're getting from traditional products. And then once you do that, once you raise the outcome, once you're able to dream of an outcome that's even better than they're currently getting from any of the other providers, then you can begin to to plan? What is the outcome that you are going to need to create in order to fulfill that need? All right, now there's a whole bunch of other outcomes that we can talk about. And it's kind of a weird situation, right? So, like, the outcomes, they actually point back to all of the other checklists that we've discussed before. All right, so with state progress, we just pointed out specifically, we're talking about outcomes. And like I said, in the book, Create Crucial Insight, it talks about how to plan for activities, communications, how to plan for products, services, and features. Now, as we start to look at the other checklists, then like, what are other outcomes? Like, do you remember state synergies? So what is it that you're trying to, what are the outcomes of the state synergies checklist? You're trying to spot the opportunities for cooperation. All right, so what level of cooperation? What are the outcomes that people want? What does that cooperation look like? Your customer, what is the level of cooperation that they're looking for? And how do you plan for that level of cooperation? What are some other people you can bring into the picture in order to cooperate at that level? Who are the people within your current network that you can bring on board? What about innovation? So maybe there is a need for innovation. What are the outcomes that you would like to work toward regarding innovation? So then, of course, we have the state inventiveness checklist. You can go there and start to pinpoint the innovations, the outcomes that you want to work toward. How about insight and information? So maybe you need some insight or information regarding the decision-making process. All right, we want insight. We want more information. So then you can go to the state assumptions checklist. What about work styles? All right, so the outcome that we're working toward is we would like to change our work style. We're currently experimenting with the process. We would like to become procedural. Or we're currently procedural and we need to start experimenting with a new process. What is the outcome that you are seeking for with your work process? How about your resources? All right, so we haven't actually worked with the state resources checklist, but you can start to think about that. What are the resources that we want to use? What are the resources that we want to acquire? What are those outcomes? We want to get this resource. All right, so it's a little bit interesting that we have walked all the way down this road, and then once we got to the end of the road, we had to walk all the way back again. So we went into all these different checklists, and we were able to point to different areas of the state progress checklist that connect to all of these other checklists. And then now we get back to this point where we're trying to figure out the outcomes, and then we realize that many of the outcomes are related to the things that we are working with the other checklists. It kind of reminds me of a story that an old man once told me about Daniel's dream. So there's a story in the Bible about Daniel's dream or Daniel's time. And actually, I never found the story in the Bible yet. Maybe someone can point that out. But this old man, he told me that the way that time works, he said time, according to this story, is like a dish. And the dish is spinning in every direction at the same time. And that was the closest he could get to an explanation of time. So sometimes I feel like when we're working with these checklists, that we are in all places at all times. And that, you think you're in one place, in one theme of one checklist, and then it connects to this other checklist, and then once you get over to this corner, then you're coming back again, and they're all spinning and moving all at the same time. So try to simplify that. And just underneath the name at the top, because you have a piece of paper, the names, and then under the names, write the outcomes that each entity wants. Thanks for tuning into Space Between Ideas. I'm Blaine Gates.